Pope Francis recently made a shocking statement that has taken the world by surprise. His comments have stirred significant attention, leaving people talking across the globe.
1 second, Pope Francis, revered worldwide for his humility and devotion, has always been a beacon of faith and unity. So when the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral, a symbol of history and devotion, reopened after years of restoration, everyone expected the Pope to be there to bless it. But surprisingly, he wasn't. The world was left in shock, and speculation ran rampant. What could be the reason behind his absence? In this video, we reveal the shocking statement Pope Francis made about Notre Dame, unraveling a surprising twist that caught everyone off guard. Stay tuned to discover the truth behind his decision. Early life, humble beginnings in Buenos Aires. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on December 17, 1936, in the Flores neighborhood of Buenos Aires, Argentina, grew up in a family that was deeply grounded in humility and faith. The eldest of 5 children, Jorge was born into a working-class family. His father, Mario José Bergoglio, was an Italian immigrant who worked as an accountant, while his mother, Regina Maria Sivori, was a homemaker with northern Italian roots. The Bergoglio family had fled Italy in 1929 to escape the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini, seeking a new life in Argentina, driven not by economic hardship, but by the hope of freedom and opportunity. Their story of resilience and perseverance in the face of hardship would have a lasting impact on Jorge, shaping his values and his approach to life. Growing up in a close-knit family, Jorge's early life was filled with the everyday joys and struggles that define many childhoods. He spent his days playing soccer in the streets of Buenos Aires, bonding with his family and attending school. But even at a young age, there was something special about him. His parents instilled in him a sense of discipline and responsibility, and he was expected to work hard and serve his community. It was within this environment of love and care that Jorge's foundation of humility, respect for others, and a deep connection to his faith began to form. From chemistry to the church, a life-changing decision. In his teenage years, Jorge was a typical young man trying to figure out his place in the world. He attended the prestigious Wilfrid Barón de los Santos Angeles, a Salesian school in Ramos Mejia, where he was exposed to a more disciplined and spiritually focused life. It was during these formative years that Jorge began to develop a sense of spirituality, even though he had yet to fully realize the calling that would later shape his life. He was an enthusiastic student, but his path would take a dramatic turn when he enrolled at the Escuela Técnica Industrial No. 27, where he pursued studies in chemistry. It might be surprising to learn that the man who would one day become the leader of the Catholic Church was once a young man immersed in the world of science. Jorge earned a diploma as a chemical technician and spent time working in a food lab. It's difficult to imagine the future pope in a white lab coat, testing chemicals, but this was part of his journey. During these years, Jorge also worked several odd jobs, including as a janitor and a bouncer at a bar. While these experiences may seem disconnected from his later path, they helped him better understand the challenges faced by ordinary people, shaping his empathy and desire to serve others. However, at the age of 21, Jorge's life took a dramatic turn. He became seriously ill, battling life-threatening pneumonia and undergoing surgery to have 3 cysts removed, which resulted in him losing part of one of his lungs. This experience was a profound moment for Jorge, one that forced him to pause, reflect, and consider the direction his life should take. The ordeal gave him a new perspective on life and prompted him to think about the greater purpose that lay ahead. A calling. The moment that changed his life. In 1958, at a time when Jorge was still recovering from his illness, something extraordinary happened. He was on his way to celebrate Spring Day with friends when he decided to stop at a church for confession. This seemingly small act would become a life-changing moment. During that visit, Jorge felt a deep, inexplicable pull toward the church, one that he could not ignore. It was as though a spark had been lit within him, a calling to dedicate his life to the service of others through the church. From that moment on, Jorge's path was forever altered. His interest in chemistry and science faded, and he made the decision to devote himself fully to the religious life. In 1958, at the age of 22, he entered the Society of Jesus, becoming a Jesuit novice. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one rooted in faith, spirituality, and a commitment to serve the church and its people. His Jesuit training took him on a journey that spanned Argentina and beyond. He first studied humanities in Santiago, Chile, before returning to Buenos Aires to study philosophy. During these years, Jorge experienced moments of doubt and temptation, like most people. He even confessed that he once had a crush on a girl, a reminder that he was human, with the same struggles and desires as anyone else. However, despite these challenges, he remained steadfast in his commitment to the Jesuit life. He took his first vows as a Jesuit in 1960, marking the beginning of a long and fulfilling career dedicated to teaching and service. Becoming a priest, a commitment to faith and service. In 1969, after years of rigorous study and reflection, Jorge Bergoglio was ordained as a priest. This moment marked the culmination of his spiritual journey and set the stage for his future role in the church. As a priest, Jorge's approach to ministry was characterized by a deep sense of humility, compassion, and pastoral care. He understood the importance of connecting with people on a personal level, and his work in education, counseling, and pastoral care was marked by these values. His rise within the Jesuit community was swift. In 1973, he was appointed Provincial Superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, where he focused on expanding pastoral outreach and deepening the connection between the church and the people. His leadership during this period was often marked by tension, as not all members of the Jesuit community agreed with his priorities. However, Jorge remained dedicated to his mission, emphasizing the need for social justice and a focus on serving the poor and marginalized. Becoming Archbishop, a man of the people. By 1992, Jorge Bergoglio's humility and dedication to social justice had earned him the position of Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires. 6 years later, in 1998, he was appointed Archbishop of the city, a role that would define much of his leadership. It was during this time that he became known as the Slum Bishop for his tireless efforts to serve the poorest neighborhoods in Buenos Aires. While many church leaders might have distanced themselves from the most impoverished areas, Jorge saw his role as a mission to serve the most marginalized. He moved closer to these neighborhoods, doubling the number of priests working in the slums, and made it his personal mission to be present for the poor. He visited hospitals, washed the feet of the poor, and worked tirelessly to bring comfort and dignity to those who had been forgotten by society. His approach was simple but powerful, a refusal to live in luxury and a commitment to serving others. Jorge lived a humble life, cooking his own meals and taking the bus to work, despite his prominence within the church. This lifestyle, in stark contrast to the lavishness often associated with positions of power, reinforced his message of humility and devotion to service. It was clear that Jorge Bergoglio was not concerned with status or recognition. His sole focus was on living a life of service to God and to the people. Becoming Pope, a new era for the Church. In 2013, the world was stunned when Pope Benedict XVI resigned, creating a vacancy for the papacy for the first time in nearly 600 years. The cardinals gathered in a conclave to elect a new pope, and in a historic moment, they chose Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. He took the name Francis in honor of San Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of the poor and the humble. Pope Francis's election marked a significant shift in the leadership of the Catholic Church. He was the first pope from the Americas, the first Jesuit pope, and the first non-European pope in over 1,200 years. His election was a signal of change, one that emphasized simplicity, humility, and a return to the core values of the Church. From the very beginning of his papacy, Pope Francis broke with many traditions that had been long-standing in the Vatican. His decision to live in the Vatican guest house rather than the traditional papal apartments, his refusal to ride in the ornate papal car, and his focus on living a life of simplicity sent a clear message. The papacy was not about luxury or power, and has been particularly vocal about the need to protect and care for the most vulnerable in society. His actions have reflected these values, whether it's through his visits to the sick, his outreach to refugees, or his calls for peace and justice in the world. Perhaps what makes Pope Francis so beloved is his ability to connect with ordinary people. He doesn't just preach from a distance, He engages with people on a personal level, offering words of encouragement and support to those in need. His legacy is one of service, humility, and a reminder that true leadership is about compassion and love for others. As Pope Francis continues to serve as the leader of the Catholic Church, his journey from humble beginnings to the highest office in the Church remains a testament to the power of faith, humility, and the commitment to serve others. His papacy is one of reform, compassion, and a renewed focus on the core values of the Church. In a world that often values power and prestige, Pope Francis reminds us that true greatness lies in humility, service, and love. Responding to natural disasters, aid and compassion in action. Pope Francis's response to global humanitarian crises is marked by a direct, compassionate approach. One of the most powerful examples of his commitment to charity came after the devastating earthquakes that struck Turkey and Syria in 2023. While other world leaders sent condolences and offered prayers, Pope Francis took immediate action. He coordinated financial aid, sent supplies such as food, medicine, and blankets, and ensured that international organizations like the Rava Foundation mobilized resources to provide support to refugee camps. This response was not a one-off incident. Over the years, Pope Francis has consistently demonstrated his deep commitment to those suffering from natural disasters, conflicts, and oppression. His charity extends beyond sending aid from afar. He believes that true charity requires personal involvement, a willingness to meet the suffering where it exists and offer real help, whether through humanitarian relief or coordinated efforts to rebuild lives. Pope Francis's work in Ukraine is another prime example of his proactive approach to charity. Long before the outbreak of the war in 2022, Pope Francis had turned his attention to the suffering in Ukraine, a country grappling with political instability and socio-economic challenges. In 2016, he personally donated $6 million to provide not only basic necessities such as food, water, and clothing, but also critical medical care and therapy for the injured. His donation was not simply a gesture of financial support, it was a message of solidarity with the Ukrainian people. A reminder that the Church's role is to heal and restore dignity, not just address immediate needs. The broader vision of charity, healing and dignity. For Pope Francis, charity is not limited to addressing immediate short-term needs. He understands that charity must also help people heal, rebuild, and regain their dignity. This holistic approach to charity involves creating systems and structures that allow people to recover not just materially, but emotionally and spiritually as well. His work with various global organizations reflects this vision of charity as both a compassionate response to crises and a long-term commitment to human flourishing. One of the Pope's signature initiatives focuses on children, whom he calls the seeds of the future. He has worked tirelessly to promote global health and education for children in underserved areas. His global network for children aims to create hubs of medical excellence in the most deprived regions of the world, providing care, support, and hope to young people facing the devastating effects of poverty, war, and disease. This initiative reminds us that while some illnesses may be incurable, no child should ever be considered incurable in the eyes of love. Francis's message is clear. Charity is not just about giving, but about investing in the future of the most vulnerable members of society. Supporting small organizations and grassroots movements. One of the most remarkable aspects of Pope Francis's approach to charity is his ability to support both large global organizations and small grassroots movements. While the Vatican and major international agencies play a vital role in global humanitarian efforts, Pope Francis has consistently praised and uplifted smaller, less visible organizations that share his vision of service and compassion. These organizations may not always make headlines, but their work has a profound impact on the lives of the people they serve. Pope Francis has regularly expressed admiration for organizations like Caritas Internationalis, which operates in over 200 countries, providing aid to those suffering from hunger, conflict, and displacement. His support for such groups underscores his belief in the power of community-based organizations to effect change. Similarly, the University College for Aspiring Missionary Doctors, which trains medical professionals to serve in underserved hospitals in Africa, has been a beneficiary of the Pope's encouragement and support. These smaller organizations, working quietly and effectively in the background, embody the spirit of charity that Pope Francis seeks to inspire across the globe. In Latin America, Pope Francis has inspired countless local initiatives aimed at tackling the pervasive issues of poverty, homelessness, and inequality. His vision for charity in South America is not just about providing material assistance, but also about empowering communities to create lasting change. One of his key messages is that the church must be a church of the poor, serving the marginalized not just through charity, but by fostering a sense of dignity and empowerment among those who are often overlooked by society. During the World Day of the Poor, Pope Francis reminded the global church that serving the poor is not optional. It is central to the Christian mission. In a moving homily, he declared that the church becomes the Church of Jesus only to the extent that it serves the poor. This powerful message encapsulates the heart of Pope Francis's papacy, a call to act, to serve, and to live out one's faith by lifting others up, particularly the most vulnerable and disadvantaged. The personal touch. Sharing meals and embracing the marginalized. What truly sets Pope Francis apart is his ability to combine grand ideas with small, deeply personal acts of charity. It is one thing to preach about charity from the pulpit, but it is another to live it out in everyday actions. Pope Francis leads by example, offering a living testament to the idea that charity is not just about writing a check or sending aid. It's about connecting with people, building relationships, and showing love in tangible ways. One of the most touching examples of this is his practice of sharing meals with the poor. During the World Day of the Poor, Pope Francis personally shared lunch with over 1,300 struggling individuals, offering not just food, but companionship and solidarity. This act of sharing, simple yet profound, demonstrates his commitment to making charity a deeply personal experience. It is a reminder that even small gestures can have a transformative impact on the lives of others. For Pope Francis, charity is not about grand gestures or high-profile charity events. It is about showing up, being present, and offering love and care to those in need. Whether it's embracing the sick, visiting refugee camps, or sitting down to a meal with the homeless, Pope Francis's approach to charity is deeply rooted in the idea of presence. He reminds us that the greatest gift we can offer others is our time, our attention, and our willingness to be with them in their suffering. His charity is not abstract or detached. It is grounded in real human relationships that restore dignity and hope. Pope Francis and global diplomacy, a mission of peace and unity. Pope Francis's commitment to charity extends beyond the walls of the Vatican. His humanitarian efforts are global in scope, and his travels serve as a testament to his dedication to spreading peace, healing, and unity across the world. From his early days as Pope, he has embraced a global role, visiting countries far and wide and offering messages of hope, interfaith dialogue, and solidarity with those suffering from conflict, poverty, and injustice. One of his most significant early trips was to Brazil in 2013 for World Youth Day, where he addressed 3.5 million young people on the beaches of Copacabana. He urged them not to be part-time Christians, but to live their faith fully with dedication and commitment. This message resonated deeply with young people across the globe and set the tone for his papacy, signaling that Pope Francis would be a pope who was not content to remain behind the walls of the Vatican, but would travel the world to engage with people where they are. Over the years, his international trips have taken him to conflict zones, historical regions, and the forgotten corners of the world. Whether praying at the West Bank Barrier in 2014 or calling for peace during his visit to the Philippines in 2015, Pope Francis has consistently used his travels as an opportunity to call for dialogue, peace, and justice. His willingness to visit countries and regions deeply affected by violence, conflict, and division underscores his belief that true peace can only be achieved through understanding, cooperation, and mutual respect. 2024, a year of ambitious global outreach. The year 2024 has proven to be one of the busiest and most significant years of Pope Francis's papacy. His global outreach has reached new heights, with trips aimed at addressing pressing global issues such as environmental sustainability, social justice, interfaith dialogue, and the promotion of peace. One of the most noteworthy trips of 2024 was his Southeast Asia and Oceania tour, which included stops in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, East Timor, Singapore, Luxembourg, and Corsica. In Indonesia, the Pope signed the Joint Declaration of Insul, 2024, with Grand Imam Nasiruddin Umar, promoting religious harmony and a unified approach to tackling environmental crises. This historic document highlights the Pope's commitment to interfaith dialogue and collaboration, recognizing that different religions must work together to address the world's most pressing challenges. Pope Francis's visit to Papua New Guinea, where he advocated for an end to tribal violence, and his trip to East Timor, where he celebrated Mass for nearly half the country's population, further solidified his role as a global ambassador for peace and reconciliation. In Luxembourg, the Pope addressed economic injustice, calling on wealthy nations to take responsibility for helping the world's poorest. Finally, his visit to Corsica in December made history as the first papal visit to the island, where he delivered a powerful message about balancing secular and religious values in modern society.